In emergency management, the definition of a stakeholder is any person or entity with a vested interest in the survival or recovery of a given community.
This is the Stakeholder Prepping podcast, where the tactical comes from the practical, and today, you become your own stakeholder.
Here are your hosts, Chris and AC.
Welcome back to Stakeholder Prepping, where you, yes, you are the stakeholder in your own survival. And AC, I want to start this one by saying thank you to everyone who has liked and shared our podcast. And I think I want to start and read a couple of reviews that were just awesome before we really get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. What do you think?
Yeah, if you've got one, I have one that I liked too, and that would be awesome. And yeah, if there's somewhere you can leave a review for us, a 5-star review would be awesome, and we would love to read those. The only place I think you can really leave a review, not just a rating, I think is iTunes, maybe Amazon as well. But I don't know, like not on Spotify. You can't leave a review, It's just
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
you can give us a rating. So yeah, iTunes would be awesome. Like I said, we had one-star rating with no review, which just bums me out. I get it if people just plain out don't like us, but at least give us some constructive criticism, some feedback, like a way we can change.
Right?
Just leaving a 1-star and then not telling us what you don't like about us, that just makes me sad.
I mean, that's like taking a dookie on the sidewalk in Seattle and just walking away and not even moving it to the street.
Right. So like a Tuesday in Seattle, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a Seattle Tuesday.
It's a
Come
Seattle
on.
Tuesday. It's a Seattle Tuesday. Just a deuce on the sidewalk. So yeah, what's yours? Why don't you can read yours first, and then I've got one here that I really liked.
These people are definitely not Seattle Tuesdays. These people are awesome.
They are not Seattle Tuesdays.
So this first one, I looked at this and I thought, oh, they went for Shield Maiden. And then I put it into Google Translate and it gave me Sign Maker. So Schildmachen 13 on iTunes. Here's their review, and it says, "Ladies, you'll want to binge this like a crime series. I'm so grateful to have come across this show. As a woman working on educating myself more on preparedness, Stakeholder Prepping delivers practical information in a way that keeps me fully engaged. The depth of knowledge and the gear discussions from Chris and AC are phenomenal. I'm only a few episodes in and already hooked." Well, whether it's Shield Maiden or Sign Maker, thank you. That is awesome, and we greatly appreciate it.
That's awesome. I saw that and it was like Schildmachen, and I was like, what? It reminded me of, remember the Office episode where Michael Scott got on the dating site and he's like, I made my name Little Kid Lover so people know what I'm into. But I saw there's Schildmachen. I didn't know what that meant. So it was Sign Maker. Sign Maker is what that is. Is it German?
So in German, it's Sign Maker.
Okay.
In Norwegian, it translates closer to Shield Maiden.
Really?
So I'm not 100% sure.
It's either Sign Maker or Shield Maiden.
Or a combination of the two,
I would like to know.
Shield Maker.
Yes, I would like to. It was like Schildmachen. I was like, it's like a mechanical child. I wasn't sure what it meant.
Am I a real boy?
Am I a real boy? So, all right, I've got one too I really liked. And this was from Wendy on Facebook. And Wendy says, I came across this podcast just a month ago and became hooked after one episode. I listened to it in my car, on my computer at work, while doing my household chores. They're really easy to listen to, down to earth, and you can really tell the amount of hard work and heart both Chris and AC put into each episode. From practical to tactical in your description is exactly how I describe Stakeholder Prepping Podcast when I tell other people about it. I especially like the information you share, whether it's for real world scenarios like natural disasters or SHTF apocalypse type stuff. You include situations for people no matter their geographical location. I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, so learning how to prep for a city SHTF scenario is much different than someone who lives in the country. Thank you for all your hard work. It's very much appreciated. So thank you, Wendy. That was awesome. That was a great review. Both of those were awesome. And if you did leave us a 5-star review somewhere and we just haven't read it, we probably will. And we've got like our 2-year anniversary episode coming up, we'll probably read some. So if you want us to read your review, leave us a awesome 5-star review somewhere, preferably iTunes, because you can do that and we can see them there. And we would love to read that. So thank you so much, both of you. Those were awesome reviews.
I completely and 110% agree. It is fantastic to get that kind of feedback, and we really could not do this without you. So, okay, let's get started. AC, let me ask you something. How many people think preparedness means a bunker and 25 years of freeze-dried food?
Most people, I would say 99.9% of people, when you say what is prepping, they're like bunker, freeze dried food.
Exactly. And that perception alone stops them from getting started, right?
All the time because it feels super extreme. I think people that want to get into preparedness are like, man, it's like you have to take this giant leap into being a weirdo in order to get in.
Right. You have to have that custom fit tinfoil hat. So today we're going to reframe this. Preparedness isn't about extremism, it's about probability. So today we are going to build the Lazy Prepper's Guide. We're going to ground this in some FEMA data, behavioral science, and real world statistics. No fantasy scenarios, just what actually moves the needle. Sound good?
I like that. This is really good. I like this. So, yeah, where do you start with that?
Well, let's start with reality. So, according to FEMA, 40% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency expense without borrowing or selling something. This is not a zombie apocalypse problem. This is a resilience problem, right? Preparedness begins with margin, whether that is financial, logistical, psychological. FEMA also reports that nearly 60% of Americans have not practiced a disaster plan in the past year. So you've got 40% of people who cannot cover a $400 emergency, whether that's a spare tire that blew out or uh, even a mechanic's bill or an emergency light bill because they had to use too much heat. That's a flash freeze. That's all that takes. I can tell you our electricity bill last month was right around 210.
Yeah, sure.
This month, after the hard freeze came over the mid South, $494.
Holy crap. Yeah,
It
that's
more than
crazy.
doubled.
Yeah, that's nuts. You're right. So you've got a lot of people that can't afford a small expense or a large expense, but still an emergency expense like $400. Then you have 60% of Americans that just haven't practiced any of this, even if they are mildly prepared. None of them have practiced.
Exactly. There's no activation. It's not an issue of awareness. Everybody knows that these things can happen, but it's an activation problem. How do I actually jump in and get things started when it's happening? And it's happening all around us all the time. Behavioral science tells us that high friction behaviors don't sustain. So when preparedness requires major lifestyle change, people freeze, right? That's the my car broke down. I have to get on the subway. I'm not comfortable on the subway. I'm going to find another way to work. I'm going to take an Uber. Well, Uber is going to cost me more money, so I'm never going to get my car fixed. That's a problem. That's a major lifestyle change that tells you there is a problem. But we react just biologically. We have that high friction behavior and it doesn't work right for us. So low friction systems win because they already attach to existing habits. They reduce that cognitive load, they build incrementally, and they forgive inconsistency. So lazy prepping is simply designing for human nature instead of fighting it. That's all it is.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. It's the lazy prepper. And it doesn't mean that you have to be lazy. It just means that you fall back on that lowest level of preparedness. And that's what the lazy prepper is all about. So I really do like that. And, preparedness that survives low motivation days, that's real preparedness. And something I do want to point out here is now we're going to reference FEMA a lot and the American Red Cross and other NGOs and OGAs. And for those that don't know what that means, that's non governmental organizations and other government agencies. So we're going to reference those kinds of things a lot. And I do want to preface this with how much we do give FEMA a hard time. I mean, if you follow like our social stuff, we're always making mean FEMA memes. FEMA probably deserves a Christmas card from us because we are pretty mean to FEMA. But
They're
no
a
one,
very easy target.
they're an easy target, right? Exactly, and no one wants to go to the FEMA camp, and no one wants to rely on the government agencies for handouts when things go south. We all know how poor government response can be sometimes, but credit where credit is due here. You know what the federal government is really good at. They're good at collecting data. So when we lean on these OGAs like FEMA in this episode, we're leaning on the data they're collecting for us. And in this episode, we're lazy. So let's lean on someone else to collect that data. And that is the lazy prepper way. So when we reference FEMA here, we reference the Red Cross, it's because the federal government is pretty darn good at collecting those metrics for us. And we're coming up with that idea of here's somebody else already made the list. And I think that's where we're going with all the FEMA stuff in this. So
Yeah,
FEMA recommends.
I don't have the gas budget to drive around to every major disaster site and ask how many bottles of water did you use? How many diapers did you use?
Yeah, perfect. Exactly. Or going around all the Waffle Houses to see if they're still open or whatever. So,
Or Dunkin' Donuts in the Northeast. That
right.
has been recognized as the Waffle House Index of the Northeast.
It's the Waffle House of the Northeast. That's exactly right. Yeah. You know what we're not going to do? We're not going to no fucking Starbucks. It's Dunkin'. We're going to Dunkin'. So FEMA recommends that households maintain at least 3 days of food and water and encourages longer self-sufficiency when possible. Now, here's the gap. Most Americans don't have even 3 days ready without going to the store. And they always say that the grocery store has like 3 days worth of food in it, right? If something goes south, that grocery store is going to be empty way quicker than you really think it's going to be. And according to FEMA and the American Red Cross, the most common disaster disruptions in the US are severe storms, hurricanes, flooding, wildfires, and then those winter weather events. Now, the majority of these cause temporary infrastructure disruption, not total societal collapse, but they do cause temporary disruption. And people still manage to die in every one of these every year, every time. So the one extra item rule addresses that gap. And this is an easy, lazy prepper thing that costs not a lot of incremental money, but every grocery trip, add one shelf stable item. This is super easy. And so over the year, let's say you go to the grocery store every week. Over that year, you've added an additional 52 deep pantry items. And this is easy stuff. And that could be, you go and you look, all right, we did our grocery shopping, and what is on sale this week that we know will keep for some amount of time, and if you listen to our dollar preps episode or our dollar food preps episode, you can say, oh, okay, well, I want to get this particular bean because it's on sale and I know it's going to last this long. So this is a very easy thing to do. And that will likely equal a 2 to 4 week buffer for many households at the end of the year. So think about that. You're spending an extra buck or two every time you go to the grocery store. At the end of the year, you have a month of shelf stable food. And this isn't like the buckets of emergency food that you are never going to eat. These are the things that you are going to eat at some point. So you're not actually spending any incremental money, because as you rotate out this stock, you can work those small purchases into your weekly dinner plans. So that's all pretty easy, right?
Yeah, this is a can or two of extra Bush's baked beans with bacon, or
Sure.
an extra bag of flour that's ready to go and just sits in a Tupperware, or uh, maybe it's an extra package of tortillas that you rotate out,
Right.
something like that.
Something like that. Exactly. It's those kinds of easy things. Long shelf stable food that is inexpensive, but it's things you are already going to eat. And every trip to the grocery store, just buy one extra of something. Look and see what's on sale and go, in the next year, yes, I would consume that. And here's why that matters. I'll give you an example. After Hurricane Harvey, large portions of Houston experienced supply chain disruption lasting weeks. During, was it Winter Storm Uri, Uri, Uri in Texas?
Uri.
Uri. Yeah, millions lost power and water access for days. So most disasters are short term grid or supply interruptions. But if you're not prepared for that very small inconvenience, it can be a huge issue for you and your household. So a small buffer handles the majority of these statistically common events. Does that make sense?
Yeah, preparedness should follow FEMA frequency data, not catastrophic movie scripts. I mean, if you are building your stockpile for Greenland, or Deep Impact, or Armageddon, you are way overspending before you even break ground on your bunker,
Right.
right?
Yep.
That's just it's way out of budget. And you can do a lot more and get started and actually build the habits to survive the apocalypse way earlier. Systems like AeroGarden, it's not about a self-sustaining agriculture. And they're about building competence. So an AeroGarden, if you're not familiar with it, it's an in-home aeroponic garden that you fill it with water. You start some seed pods. You can start pods with whatever you want: tomatoes, corn, herbs. If you want fresh herbs in your kitchen to cook with, it is phenomenal for that. That's what we use ours for. Um, but that's where you really just have to kind of buckle down, make one investment, and you can do almost unlimited things with it. Um, they're all about building competence, and FEMA emphasizes community resilience and self sufficiency during the first 72 hours of a disaster. What do you know? 72 hours is 3 days, 3 days water, 3 days food.
It's
That
that rule of
kind of
threes
translates,
coming
right?
back to you. Yep. Yep.
What do you know? That 72-hour window is critical, because it's it's all about how fast the government can actually respond and bring major aid. Infrastructure and supply lines can get reestablished, and things can start the process of getting back online. But indoor hydroponics teaches food growth timelines that you can then extrapolate into larger plants, which the Arrow Garden is extremely useful for planting your starters. Water input management, nutrient dependency awareness, and psychological research shows that perceived control during crisis significantly reduces panic driven decision making. If you feel that you are in control of one thing, even if it's just your desktop or countertop garden, if you can control that, you are less likely to make stupid mistakes. You're
That's
less likely to do something dumb.
that's interesting. I see what you're saying. So you're like, yeah, get my little stupid herb garden. It's lazy, it's easy, and then I'm growing tomatoes. And yes, I'm not going to live forever on that 2 or 3 tomatoes, but In a long-term situation, now I can do my starters in the same little thing. But in the lazy prepper way, I don't have to go to the grocery store for tomatoes.
Exactly. And even small productive capability, growing herbs, greens, small vegetables, it reinforces a sense of agency. Hey, I did that. I grew that. I grew my own salad, and guess what? It was the best tasting one I've ever had. That's just a sense of agency. You put the blood, sweat, and tears in, hopefully not blood because you didn't cut yourself opening up the packaging. AC, I know how you like to cut yourself with every sharp implement around you,
Yeah,
but
you don't know how sharp it is until you cut yourself. That's true.
right? But preparedness is as much psychological as it is logistical, and agency improves judgment under stress.
I like that. Yeah. So just having control of some of the small things is easy, and it is kind of a lazy way to just sort of take control the things you can. And then, yeah, just feel like you're a little more, I guess, a little less overwhelmed by all the big stuff, right? If you actually have control over some of those small things, like the little bit of food that you've acquired over the last 52 weeks.
This goes back to exactly what Brad Colbert was talking about in episode 75. And in a chaos situation, bullets whizzing all around, explosions going off right next to you, just taking a second to get your bearings. That is the same concept as control what you can and accept everything else around you. You have agency. What can you do?
I like that. That's really good. So I want to talk a little bit about the gear, the lazy prepper gear, and we just love gear. Gear. So let's talk
Gear,
about gear.
gear, gear. I
Gear.
like gear.
I like gear. So FEMA publishes emergency kit checklists, and this is pretty cool. And I think we posted links to these before, but we can post some links on our blog to the FEMA basic checklist. And I would say that most of our listeners have this thing already dialed in triplicate. But if you don't, and if you are the lazy prepper, it's very cool to just kind of look at this and say, okay, what should I have in my emergency kit? Because maybe you forgot something very basic, but it's easy. It's the flashlights, it's the battery, it's the first aid supplies, it's water, non-perishable food, and an emergency radio, right? A good NOAA radio. We've posted some links to some $10 NOAA radios that will just keep you informed about what's going on in, a long-term disaster for 10 bucks.
Which, other than the radio, every item on that list could be one of your extra items on your grocery list.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Every one of those things besides the NOAA radio is something you can pick up at the grocery store. Even flashlights and batteries, man, they have that stuff. Even the first aid kit. So the problem isn't lack of guidance. It's not that people just don't know where to start. There's so much information, right? I mean, we are one of a billion podcasts that talk about this all the time. And, there's dozens of social media groups and all this online content and YouTube pages. But the issue is decision fatigue. There's just hundreds of product options in every one of these categories. And the paradox of choice causes delays. And this is one of the reasons that I do like BattleBox, right? That's kind of a cool one because I'll tell you, I subscribe to BattleBox and I get probably, I don't know, every month. It's mostly stuff that I have some version of that. And quite often I'm like, oh, hey, look, this is a better mousetrap. So I will take the thing that BattleBox gave me, and that will be my primary. And something in that category, like the flashlight, will move to my alternate or my contingency. And basically you're just building that sort of active redundancy. And instead of researching every one of these items individually, you basically build capability through that kind of curated exposure, right? And then that builds that redundancy in your lighting redundancy and your fire starting capability and your water purification layering and compact medical redundancy. So I like things like that are kind of cool. That's an easy way to do it. But I just think that people get this decision fatigue where they say, hey, I want to go buy a new flashlight. And there's so many of them out there that then you just go, I don't know which one to buy.
Right.
The key is start small, and you can spend a very small amount of money on a flashlight that is going to perform the job of a flashlight. And then once you decide what features you do or don't like, then you can move up. And it's not like you wasted that flashlight. Now you are building your pace model for lighting. Now you have your backup flashlight. So that would be the advice I would give here is start small in those categories, the small first aid kit. And now when you get a better first aid kit for your trauma kit, now that small first aid kit moves into your vehicle and it becomes your alternate first aid kit. You see what I'm saying? So you're building that redundancy, but you don't have useless extra stuff.
Right. Everything still has its original purpose, but you're not going for the best of the best of the best, sir.
Right off the bat, because I think a lot of people go, man, I want to get a good flashlight. I'm going to spend $100 on a flashlight, which is a ton of money to spend on a flashlight. But then there's so many really high quality $100 flashlights out there that you're just not going to do it. And my advice would be buy the $10 flashlight and then decide what features you would like to see in your next flashlight. You go, oh, I like being able to replace my batteries. I would rather this be a AAA because I've got a bunch of other stuff runs on AAA rather than my CR123 batteries. That the only thing I have for that takes CR123s is this stupid flashlight or things like that, or the crenellated bezel. Oh, it turns out I really don't have a lot of plans to punch somebody in the face with my flashlight, and I would rather not the crenellated bezel because I can use the non-crenellated flashlight with my TACNAV card to make a lantern. See what I did there?
Or I like the rechargeable battery and the push button as
Right,
opposed to the flick
right.
switch and the ones that I constantly have to check whether the batteries are good. I know it's
100%.
on the it's on the charger. I can see where the indicator is, and I know that that battery, if I pull it off the charger, I've got 100 hours of usable light.
That's exactly right. So this layered redundancy, it aligns directly with FEMA's recommendation for self-sufficiency during early disaster response. And preparedness must be accessible to scale. So we can certainly talk about some gear that's great for the lazy prepper. And I'll give you just a couple small examples, but I found a really cool, like a dual fuel. It's a stove slash heater, like kind of like the My Buddy thing where I've got, I'm going to stock this one size of pressurized gas. Like maybe I'm a backpacker, so I'm only going to do butane. Well, there are dual fuel stoves that take both the butane and the propane. You could find a heater slash stove that has a lantern attachment and you only have to stock the one kind of fuel for that. So start thinking in terms of that where you've got this layered redundancy and you've got commonality across your fuel. And then it's very easy to be the lazy prepper. Um, get one case of MREs. That's pretty easy and they kind of last forever. And maybe MREs aren't your jam. They don't taste that great sometimes. But if you're not going to do MREs, have a couple of Vodes meals on hand and some Element or another powdered drink mix, and you're good to go. And the cool thing is, you will use those regardless. I promise you, lazy prepper or not, you will at some point in the next quarter century want a home cooked meal and you will have forgotten to go to the store. I promise you that. And
Yes.
and if in a quarter century that doesn't happen to you once, give me a call and I'll send you a free Vodes meal. But I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It just is.
You
We
know
can go
what?
through this.
Yeah, if you in the next 25 years, in the next 25 years, if we are still on the air and
I'll buy
you have
I'll buy
not
that Vodes
forgotten to
back
go to
from
the
you.
I will I I will send you a complete prepper kit. I will pay for a Jace medical kit, send you that and the TACNAV card kit for free.
You see what I'm saying, though? I mean, at some point, it seems very simple when you put it in those terms that go buy yourself a couple of these, like a Vode's meal, right? We've got the $10 shipped to your door deal with Brandon over there. I'm pretty sure that's still good. And you've got one meal for two people that's just there. And they're good. And in the next 25 years, I guarantee you, you will have forgotten to go to the store for dinner once. Um, but we can do the same thing with like water filtration, right? There's 1,000 different ways to filter water out there, and people have that level of indecision where like, man, I just don't know which one to buy, and they end up not buying one. So here's what you need to do: the next time you go to the store, spend one of those extra item dollars that we just told you about, and just buy a gallon of water. They last for 2 to 5 years. That commercially bottled water, and you will use it at some point in the next 2 to 5 years. You can open the bottle of water rather than take it out of your tap. But that's just the very easy, lazy prepper way. And then you can start thinking about, oh, do I want to buy some water bricks? And do I want to store my own tap water? And you can layer that system. And just because you bought the water filter or the water brick doesn't mean that that gallon of water you bought is useless. It's simply layered redundancy, and it finds its way into your pace model. And that is just such an easy, lazy prepper thing to do.
Yeah, it could be the water that every time you need to refill your aero garden or your hydroponic starter, that's what you use to refill it. And when you refill it, okay, I need to rotate stock. So now I need to go grab another gallon of purified water from the grocery store. That's perfect.
Yeah, and a
That's
lot of us do starters. I do starters all the time. But the cool thing about having something like a little easy indoor hydroponic setup like that is, yes, you're not gonna grow all your own food there, obviously. But if you don't have like a south facing window where you can't grow a good starter, having the little UV lights just helps with that, because now you can grow them in any room of your house. And yeah, I do kind of like that. It's a good idea. I should look into that because I do some UV starters when I just don't have enough southern facing windows to start with early in the season. Um, but yeah, it's a good thing to do if you live in an apartment or something where you just don't have a room for an outdoor garden. Yeah, you can grow yourself a couple tomatoes here and there. But if you do plant your own garden every year, then having that little starter setup allows you to start earlier in the season and produce more food for yourself. And then, like you said, that just gives you that psychologically, it just feels a lot better to have a little more control over your own supply chain.
precisely. And if you are in a colder climate, it gives you a lot longer growing season. So you end up with a bigger crop because you can start as early as February in a lot of places.
Sure. Yeah.
You just have to get them into your starter in November-ish around. So I did want to comment, don't forget about the code with Vodes. So it is available on our website, and those meals are fantastic. Like I want to just go buy more for just regular dinners. Like if I'm eating solo at the kitchen counter or something on a late night, they're great.
Uh,
I love
I'll
them.
I'll admit I have eaten some Vode's freeze dried food, like just for breakfast, just because I am lazy, and I bought a bunch of it when he came on and gave us a code. I just bought a bunch, and now I'm sitting on a bunch of it. And yes, I know it'll last for 25 years, but still, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do biscuits and gravy today for breakfast because I'm lazy.
And what did you think of the tater tot hot dish? I know you'd never had something like that
I
before.
had tater tot hot dish is a little weird, man. I don't have a lot of Midwestern blood in me, but it was good. It's the tater tot casserole, and it's funny when we talked about that. So many listeners were like, "You've never had tater tot casserole? It's like a Midwestern staple." Uh,
It
but yeah,
is.
I'm telling you, it sounds like something a lazy dad in his underwear made up. He's like, "We've got some tater tots and some cream soup and some meat product, and we're just going to mix it in here. But it tastes remarkably good.
Fantastic. I love that. So let's talk about more preparedness. Preparedness is not just gear, like you were just talking about. It also comes down to awareness and mobility. And FEMA, they have this Ready campaign, and it emphasizes situational awareness and evacuation planning. And this is very, very important for when we are recording this, and when this comes out. What is happening in Mexico right now, and all of the tourists that are down in Mexico right now. This is kind of critical information for what can happen and how fast things can go south. So, being situationally aware and having an evacuation route planned. Situational awareness practice requires zero equipment. When entering any building, identify two exits, the one you came in and another one. That's it. Identify potential hazards. Is there a chair that is blocking an exit? Is there a broken pipe? Is there a wire sparking? Those are obvious ones, but what are the hazards that are there? And then note emergency signage. Those are the easy ones, the ones that say stairs this way or emergency exit. That one should be pretty obvious. Repeated scanning builds environmental literacy. And you will notice this at AC. I know you know this because you've been to a ton of countries, but you know what emergency signage looks like in most of the developed world, right?
Sure, yeah, it looks different in other places. That's exactly right. So knowing what that signage is going to look like before you go to another country where the primary language is not yours.
Right. But you can still navigate to find an emergency exit if needed. So, neurologically, building that environmental literacy strengthens pattern recognition. And then you can add physical capability on top of that. During Hurricane Katrina and a lot of other evacuations, but during Hurricane Katrina for sure, mobility became a defining factor in survival and relocation. If you cannot carry supplies, move quickly, or walk extended distances, your preparedness capability is reduced. And you have to recognize and understand that. Baseline functional fitness is preparedness.
Yeah, that's right. You don't have to. I know it's so funny because we like just have guests on and we like Brad who's like, okay, can you ruck 50 miles? But no, the lazy prepper just needs to be able to like walk down the street and carry their bag because otherwise you're stuck and you have to rely on other people. So you're right. There is a baseline amount of physical fitness that is just it's just good habit. And so having that baseline of physical fitness is huge. Maybe, maybe that's the laziness of just moving to the standing desk while you're working all day or getting the little under desk treadmill or something like that. But there are some very easy, lazy prepper fitness hacks that you can do that are going to make you exponentially more prepared than someone who isn't doing those things.
Well, and understanding how much your physical fitness and your physical capabilities can be compromised. Say there's a tornado and you are an immensely capable organizer, planner, community organizer, and prepper. But last week you got broadsided and you broke your leg. So you're in a walking cast. How is
Sure.
that going to affect your preparedness?
Yeah, you have to have a plan. That's exactly exactly right. Yeah. Gosh, I didn't even think about that. How much would that just suck? Like if you're all prepared and physically ready and you've got all your gear and all your kit and then yeah, here you are stuck with a broken leg or something like that. It just changes the whole dynamic of if you have to evacuate or if something happens. That's the thing. I never want to think about that getting injured and then having one of these scenarios we throw at you every week actually happen. That just sounds terrible.
But
So,
hey, we adapt and overcome. That is what
That's right.
preppers do, right?
Improvise, adapt, and overcome. Hoorah. So, capability first, and then gear amplifies that. Gear is your force multiplier. And FEMA emphasizes planning ahead for evacuation, communication, and supply chain disruption. But many households just have never rehearsed these conversations. So if in your household you have all the stuff we've talked about, you've got the batteries and the flashlights and the first aid kit and you've got the extra food and all that stuff, but your household has never war gamed this out, that can just be such an issue when something actually happens, when you are planning on other members of your family doing something and you've just never talked about it. So wargaming is a very easy, structured rehearsal. Ask the family unit, what if we lose power for 72 hours? What appliances fail immediately? How long does refrigerated food last? How do we cook? If cell service fails, how do we communicate? How do we get a hold of other people that are outside of the household at that time? Remember, most of us spend, half of our time away from the home. And then where do we regroup if we are evacuated and can't communicate? So cognitive science shows that rehearsal reduces decision latency under stress. And that's just a fact. If you have rehearsed any of this, you're going to fall back on your lowest level of training. So preparedness is reducing decision time when seconds matter. And mental rehearsal costs you nothing. It's totally free. It is the laziest thing you can do. You can, rather than watching a 30-minute sitcom with the family one night, you can war game this stuff out. And you're just going to be that much better prepared because of it. And it costs you nothing except time you are going to spend being lazy.
My last two brain cells are going to get a workout.
Yep. Let's do it.
Last one. Okay. Let's talk about this in numbers. According to NOAA and FEMA data, the U.S. experiences dozens of billion-dollar, yes, billion with a B, dollar weather events annually. I think around 2001, it used to be 2, but according to the most recent insurance data that I've looked at, it's 9 per year. So in the past 26 years, we've gone from $2 billion events to $9 billion events per year.
Yeah, that's
Um,
crazy.
it's it's a pretty big expansion. The majority of them are weather related: hurricanes, flooding, severe storms, wildfires. The things we hear about on the news, that news cycle just will not stop. Statistically common risks are environmental and infrastructural. If you want measurable improvement, store at least 1 gallon of water per person per day for 7 days. For you, that is 7 gallons of water. That is one aquatainer that you can get at Walmart for about $17 to $18. That could be your one item, right? That's one aquatainer per person of your household, whether it is man, woman, child, grandpa, grandma, doesn't matter. One of those per person. Cycle it out every 6 months to a year. Maintain a trauma kit with a tourniquet and a compression bandage. You can get a discount on this through Jace using our code.
Oh yeah, right. I forgot all about Jace.
They have completed trauma kits with tourniquets, with everything you could possibly need for an advanced trauma case, including a nasopharyngeal airway and the weird jelly that gets it down your nose easier. I was just looking at these earlier today. You can get all of that at Jace Medical. Follow our link, use our code, and you get a discount. Keep vehicles fueled above half. Holy cow. We and FEMA and NOAA all align on one specific issue.
That is the easiest one ever, man. Keep a half a tank of gas in your car. That is the easiest lazy prepper thing ever. Just keep a half a tank of gas in your car.
It's wild how simple that is, and most people don't do it. And then maintain an emergency savings. I will tell you from experience how difficult this can be to get started. Okay. Um, Starting out, it was incredibly difficult. It was paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, but got to a point where, hey, $20 is going to go into the savings account. We've got $20 between us at the end of the paycheck. We're going to put it into a savings account. Next paycheck hits. All right, we've got another $20. And then it became 25. And then it became 30. And then it became 35. And eventually we were able to build and build and build. And we had $400 in a savings account. And then we were able to build a buffer, and we started building a buffer towards, okay, we've got $1,000 in this savings account. That is our insurance savings account. We have $1,000 that will be touched for nothing but insurance claims. We had to use it. We got in an accident, $500 deductible. We didn't have to change our lifestyle to take out that deductible. That was huge for us. And we were able to then refill that account, continue on. But it's it's pennies on the dollar that add up actually when you look back very quickly. In about 6 months we were able to save $400. A year later it was at 2,000, and it's continued to grow from there. So it is something that it takes a little bit of a mind shift, a little bit of pre-planning, but I promise if my dumbass was able to do it, you can do it.
And just like that, you're ahead of 40% of the people in the country, right? As they say,
Exactly.
40% of the people don't have that $400 buffer. So, uh, I want to talk a little bit about what these disasters do psychologically. FEMA repeatedly emphasizes that disasters really do strain families in this in the mindset of preparedness. So stress does spread very quickly. Short-term crises often lead to these emotional events before there are any kind of logistical failure. So, comfort is something that you should also think of in the lazy prepper model, this comfort redundancy. And this is easy stuff. Like if you're a coffee drinker, just having a little extra coffee. Maybe coffee is one of those things that you double up on one week at the supermarket. Having pet food. If your pet is hungry, yes, that's gonna stress the pet out, but it's also going to stress you out. It's just another thing that you're not thinking of. So having that extra can of dog food or cat food is maybe one of your 52 trips to the grocery store. That might be your extra item. Thinking about entertainment. Dude, when the TV stops working and the internet stops working, people go crazy. And so
Mhm.
having maybe it's that board game, maybe it's the deck of cards, but having that analog entertainment is really going to go a long way, especially if you have children. And those are very easy things. Just having them available and having the light to play them, right? Having that little battery operated lantern so you can uh, play those board games at night. Backup chargers for everything. I literally just bought another phone charger today just because I'm like, "Oh, well, I've got my spare one that I keep in my backpack," but then I always find myself pulling that one out of my backpack if I want to charge my cell phone while being mobile. So I'm like, "Well, I should have another one of those." And it's not that I'm gonna throw the other one out. Now I just have doubled up on that redundancy, and, that battery in that cell phone charger is going to last a long time. So that's just adding to my pace model for my backups, right? And then printing your emergency information. We've talked about this one before, but man, if something happens and you need to file an insurance claim and they're like, you're looking for your insurance paperwork or you're looking for your policy, and that is, on your computer that you don't have access to. Maybe the internet's down, you don't have access to your insurance company online stuff. Just having that printed copy of your policies is going to reduce stress if you ever actually need to use it. So those are just the very easy, pragmatic things that you can do that are just going to add that extra level of comfort if something ever happens.
Yeah, and speaking of comfort, you and I were talking before we started recording. We were talking about camping and
Yeah.
how some of the things that comfort foods. Actually, we were talking about vodes and spicing things up and camping with spices, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
And you were talking about the outdoor world or the little 5 pack of spices that you twist the top and you get one spice, you twist the top and you get another
Yeah.
spice.
I think
And
everybody's seen those. That's like a REI thing, or Camping World has them. I forget the brand, but they're everywhere. Everybody who's ever been camping has seen one of those at some point. And yeah, just having the extra spices around can just it adds another layer of comfort, and it's so easy because at some point you will use those spices, right?
yeah, but they're also kind of single use, kind of frustrating. You can't open them, you can't refill them. They're once you're done with the salt and the pepper, the paprika or the oregano or whatever is kind of you've got an extra 2 slots that you can't really reuse, right? So, we came up with the idea to use a pill caddy. So,
Oh,
it's
sure.
it's 7 different, caddies, 4 containers each. We just got it off of Amazon for, I think, $3, but then we used our label maker, and we've got T.GON for tarragon and OGNO for oregano, and then salt and PPER for pepper, and just 4-letter codes for everything that's in there. Each one is individually fillable, can sprinkle however much or however little we want, and we can really season everything to taste, and we've got 28 spices to use, so that might that might make the comfort list for the lazy prepper.
Yeah, that's an easy one because you're right. You can take that camping, but if you ever find yourself out of curry or paprika or whatever your little spice is, and you find yourself out of that, you're like, oh, hey, we have that in our backup spice kit. And again, it's redundancy. Just because it exists in that little pill container you use doesn't mean it's gone forever. It means you can still use it in other places. You can use it during a power outage. You can use it when you can't go to the grocery store. So yeah, that's a very easy lazy prepper redundancy thing.
Exactly. So, I think we've kind of covered the majority of this, right? And the reality is you don't need to go extreme. You need to go statistical. There's a lot of information and data on this that we've tried to kind of boil down. Follow FEMA guidance, follow the probability curves, follow the behavioral science. One extra item per tip: layer your water, lower your decision fatigue, practice awareness, and rehearse scenarios. Does that pretty well sum up the lazy prepper's guide?
That really does. One other thing I wanted to talk about was EDC stuff for the lazy prepper.
Okay.
And there are a couple lazy prepper hacks we can throw at you when it comes to the EDC thing. And something that I think fatigues a lot of people is that EDC preparedness. Like, what knife do I carry? What gear do I train with? What if my flashlight's dead? And what if I'm wearing a t-shirt so I can't carry like the normal firearm I carry? And one for me, Chris, I don't know about you. Are you an extra mag guy?
I am.
You are always. If you carry a gun, you're carrying an extra mag all the time.
I am.
See, I struggle with that simply because I think just it depends on the outfit for me. And then I fall back on statistics where you look at statistically, how many shots are fired in a statistical, gunfight. It's like 6, right? Like there's just generally speaking, the chances of you changing mags are very low. But if you end up out of bullets, you're really, really going to wish you had that spare mag. So
And that's why.
right. And that's one of those things that I struggle with. So here's an EDC prepper hack that you don't need to think about that stuff. You don't need to think about where's all this stuff I'm going to carry, where am I going to put it on my person. Chris, um, you carry a cell phone, right? Every day.
I do.
And I
Yes.
imagine your cell phone has some kind of case on it, right?
It does. It is about the same color as several pairs of my jeans.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, mine's all worn through too. Exactly. But there is an amazing amount of unused space between your phone and the inside of that case. And you can take some of these very small two-dimensional EDC tools like Grim cards, and you can put those in between your phone and your case. You can actually stick them on the inside of that phone case. Grim, if you look at any Grim tool, they have this sticky side that you can peel off and stick onto something like some kind of like admin panel or something, but you can use the inside of your phone case as that admin panel, and there's room on the inside of any phone case. There's room for one full-size Grim card and maybe one mini Grim card, or almost a dozen of their little micro tools. You could even add like a little Fresnel lens magnifier if and you won't even notice. So if you're like me and you go through TSA all the time, you
It's like
might
an
want to
extra
have
hard pocket, right?
it's like an extra hard pocket, but you don't think about it because you always have your wallet and you always have your phone. So you don't need to think about this extra EDC gear I'm always picking up. And so if you're like me, and yeah, you like I said, you're going through TSA all the time. I actually have like my X-ray phone case and my non-X-ray phone case. So I have a little Grim card that has like some sharp objects on it, and that lives in the case that I take daily. And then my EDC through TSA phone case has a bunch of Grim tools that don't get flagged by TSA. And this is just a very easy lazy prepper thing because you don't have to be that person that's like, man, what knife am I going to carry, or where did I put it, or what pair of jeans am I going to wear, and I'm going to put all this stuff in my pocket. There's two things you always have with you, and that's going to be like your wallet and your cell phone. And if you're like me, it's a Dango wallet that has a very cool little EDC self defense tool in the wallet. I just always have it on me. I always have that piece of gear on me, and I don't think about it because I don't have to think about picking it up every day. It's just in my wallet. The only issue for me is someone that travels a lot. I have to remember to take that out of the wallet so I don't get flagged by TSA. So if you don't have
Mhm.
the security issues like I do, this is an easy one. Is any of that flat EDC stuff, there is room between your cell phone and the case, and there is room in your wallet for something like, say, our TACNAV card.
I was just going to say, I bet you could fit the entire TACNAV kit, the Fresnel lens, the TACNAV card, the fire starting card, and the instruction card. You could fit all of that into, I know I could fit all of that into the space between my S22 Ultra and the case. I know I could.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just that easy. That's a really easy EDC, lazy prepper hack is find the Grim cards you like, know how to use them, obviously, and then those are just always with you, and you don't even have to think about it. And then if you're in a situation like, man, I need a knife or I need a sewing kit, it's just always there. It's always there because it's always been there, and you don't have to think about it as part of that loadout. It's just always there. So that's a very easy, lazy prepper thing. And if you want a frictionless gear entry point, next week we are going to have Brandon Curran from BattleBox on to talk about exactly that. That's kind of the ultimate lazy prepper move. You just sort of sit back and let gear arrive at your house. Now, obviously, it's a little expensive, right? Yeah, it's not cheap to get something like BattleBox delivered every month, but I think we're going to talk with Brandon about that. But for me, I do get BattleBox. I don't get like the super expensive one because I just don't need that many knives, but I do get it delivered every month, and it is kind of a very cool lazy prepper thing that every month there's something, and I'm a pretty prepared person and I buy a lot of gear. I'm telling you, I spend way too much money on gear, but still I would say that every month there's something that either I go, "Oh man, how did I live without that?" or I swap out this something in that same category, and the thing that I already owned becomes my alternate or my contingency or my emergency, and I use the cool new one that I get from them, whether it's something like an EDC tool or some kind of camping stool or, those kinds of things. I use all this stuff. And then obviously all of my friends get very cool birthday and Christmas presents because of that.
Yeah, and BattleBox has always been about building your pace model incrementally. So you're able to stack and build and then recycle, and what was your alternate now becomes your contingency. What was your contingency now becomes your emergency, and being able to cycle through what works best for you. They're very good at that. I have always thought that they uh, provide more value in the boxes than what you give them. If you paid $29.95 for a box, you're probably getting $35 to $40 in value out of it, minimum. I'd
Yeah,
say so.
I think they do a pretty good job. Obviously, it's I would say it's like kind of higher end quality stuff, and there's probably a lot more margin baked into some of those things. But when you're looking at the MSRP of the things, it's probably you're getting somewhere around maybe 40 or 50% off. It just has to be things you use. I mean, I think that's for me being an outdoorsy type person and someone who's living on a homestead and trying to work it as much as I can, I try to use all of the gear I get, whether it's the axes or the saws or the sharpening stones or the knives or things like that. For me, I can use those things. If you're someone who lives in an apartment, maybe it wouldn't be the best idea for you because you just have a whole bunch of gear and nowhere to use it, right? So, but it is just a very easy, lazy prepper move is just kind of sitting back and letting stuff show up.
Absolutely. So, AC, I think we are ready to close this one out. Last bit of guidance for anyone still listening: preparedness does not have to be overwhelming, it just has to be intentional, right? So, start small, stack your margins, reduce your friction, and remember, you are the stakeholder in your own survival. And we will be back next week with Brandon Curran, the face of BattleBox. Until then, remember, you're your own stakeholder. We'll see you then.